So I recently made a video where I covered 20 things from newer Pokemon generations that actually show up in older ones. This video was a lot of fun, you guys enjoyed it, which I really appreciate, and it turns out there are more of these kinds of things out there as well. Enough, in fact, to make a whole nother video. So with that said, that's exactly what we're covering today, so let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, I gotta give a shout out to the partner of this video who helped make it happen, Mint Mobile. You probably know about Mint Mobile because of Ryan Reynolds, but like, the service is just as cool as the guy who owns it. A phone is one of the more expensive bills that anyone usually has, and you're paying for stuff like talk, text, and data usage, all of which you get at Mint Mobile, but for as little as $15 a month, which more than likely is a lot better than what you're paying now. Mint Mobile runs on the nation's largest 5G network and is also super easy to switch to because you do it all online and can even do it right from your phone. Like, you wouldn't even have to get up off the couch. So if you want to check out Mint for yourself and save some money, hit them up with my link, trymintmobile.com/HHH, which is linked in the description below. And a big thank you to them for partnering with and supporting the channel. The first one on this list is a more recent one from BDSP in Gen 8 that teased Scarlet and Violet in Gen 9. At the very beginning of the games in Twinleaf Town, there are a couple of flower beds near the entrance and exit of the town that have flowers in them that are scarlet and violet in color. These flowers were not colored this way in the original games, making this most assuredly a sign of what was to come in the next generation. Another hint towards Scarlet and Violet came in right at the beginning of Generation 8 in Pokemon Sword and Shield. On Route 6 in the Galar region, you come across a backpacker that mentions that she came from far away to watch the gym challenge, and then proceeds to speak in Spanish after you beat her in a battle. Considering the Spanish-inspired Paldea region was directly on the horizon in the very next generation after Sword and Shield, this was definitely an intentional bit of foreshadowing. I covered a couple things that originate from Gen 2 in the last video, so let's cover a couple more. In Wooper's Silver Pokedex entry, it actually alludes to Paldean Wooper, who made its debut 7 generations later, saying when it walks around on the ground, it coats its body with a slimy, poisonous film. It is later described in Paldean Wooper's Scarlet Dex entry that this is what caused Paldean Wooper to come into existence, saying after losing a territorial struggle, Wooper began living on land. The Pokemon changed over time, developing a poisonous film to protect its body. This basically means that Paldean Wooper evolved after being forced to live on land for an extended period of time, covered in its poisonous film. While this obviously wasn't a hint or anything like that back in the days of Gen 2, it's pretty clear that Paldean Wooper was inspired by this Pokedex entry, which retroactively puts a little bit of Gen 9 into the Gen 2 games, which is really cool. A similar thing happens with Corsola's Pokedex entries in Gen 2 as well, where it says, in a South Sea nation, the people live in communities that are built on groups of these Pokemon. This is describing the Hoenn region from the then upcoming next generation, and more specifically, it describes Pacific-Log Town, because Hoenn lies to the south of Johto, and Pacific-Log is indeed stated to be built on top of a Corsola colony. Gen 3 also featured the Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes of the Kanto games, where a tease was made to a bombshell revelation from the next generation. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver from Gen 4, it was revealed that your rival, Silver, is the son of Giovanni, and in the Gen 3 Kanto remakes, this is alluded to by a scientist at the Rocket Warehouse on 5 Island, as he asks if the player is the child of Giovanni, but then corrects himself by saying that Giovanni's kid has red hair, a clear allusion to Silver and the plot twist that was to come in the next generation. Meanwhile, in Generation 1, there is an NPC on Route 10 who says that she wishes there were a pink Pokémon with a floral pattern. Munna from Generation 5 fits this description to a T, and while it doesn't necessarily indicate that Munna was meant for Gen 1 or anything like that, it is still a pretty cool connection. Now we're gonna get into a couple of technicalities, because these next few are things that come from newer games that are in the same generation as each other and not necessarily whole new generations, but the principle is still the exact same, so I figured they were still worth including in this video. For example, in Hop's room in Pokémon Sword and Shield, a Krogunk statue can be found. This is the same kind of Krogunk statue that can be found in Pastoria City in the Sinnoh games, and is most likely meant to be alluding to Legends Arceus, a Sinnoh-based game where Hop's ancestor, Professor Laventon, is one of the main characters. The Pokemon Urshifu from Sword and Shield also gives strong connections to Legends Arceus as well, as it is clearly a more Asian-inspired Pokemon. It is said to be from the mountains of a distant region, and its Single Strike and Rapid Strike styles are very reminiscent of the agile and strong battle styles of Legends Arceus. Going back to Scarlet and Violet though, there's also the many Pecharunt hints from Scarlet and Violet as well. Again, it's not exactly from the next generation or anything, but hints were made in Scarlet and Violet's DLCs to Pecharunt who wouldn't be revealed or officially acknowledged until the Scarlet and Violet epilogue was released a little bit later. This included Pecharunt secretly appearing in the origin story about the Loyal Three, Kieran and Drayton making heavy reference to it in the Indigo Disc, and Pecharunt itself even appearing, albeit in a dormant state, at Peachy's shop in Mossway Town in Kitakami. Speaking of Scarlet and Violet, there is stuff from these games that can also be tied back to Gen 7, and one of those things is Annihilate. In the dex entry of Annihilape's pre-evolution, Primeape from Pokemon Sun, it mentions how it can become so angry that it dies, and that is literally describing Primeape's evolution into Annihilate. Not only does it become Ghost type upon evolving, but it also evolves by using the move Rage Fist and then leveling up, making this Gen 7 dex entry a clear connection to the Gen 9 Pokemon. Additionally, there's also what appears to be a Fuecoco sighting in Gen 7 as well. Now, I know some people are gonna hate on this, but I do believe that there is enough substance here to at least bring it up, and that is the fact that Fuecoco appears as if it's being alluded to by Elio in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and more specifically, in his shoes. It might sound like a conspiracy theory, but if you look at them side by side, their colors are identical, Fuecoco's nostrils are even almost identically represented on the shoes as well, and furthermore, you could even call these shoes Crocs, which ties into both the shoes and the Pokemon perfectly, even though it might sound kinda crazy. You can believe whatever you want on this one, but in my opinion, things kinda line up, I'm just saying. Also relating to Gen 9, this next one occurred on the development side of things outside of the games, but Game Freak actually filed the trademark for the name Pokemon Scarlet during the period of 2008 to 2009, which was during the Gen 4 timeframe. And this name obviously ended up becoming the name of one of the two primary Gen 9 games 5 generations and about 14 years later. Another Scarlet and Violet entry, which doesn't cross generations but it does connect to the DLC ahead of time, occurs with Terapagos, as Terapagos obviously wasn't available until the Indigo Disc DLC, which came out over a year after Scarlet and Violet came out. But Terapagos' cry could be heard in the games right away as soon as they were released, as you can actually hear it whenever a Pokemon is terastallized. In that Scarlet and Violet DLC, we also got the introduction of Diplin in the first part, the Teal Mask. Upon the DLC's release, it was discovered that Eviolite could be used with Diplin, which only works on Pokemon who can still evolve, even though Diplin's evolution, Hydrapple, hadn't been revealed yet and would not be accessible until the Indigo Disc DLC was released a few months later. In the previous video on this subject, I talked about a potential connection to Gen 7 that occurs in the third Pokemon movie, Spell of the Unknown. And there's also a potential connection between this Gen 2 movie and Generation 4 as well. When Molly's dad is showing her the book of legendary Pokemon, a picture of the Unknown is shown. While Unknown is the Pokemon that's presumed to be the Pokemon of this page of the book, this page might actually be depicting Arceus instead. Here, the Unknown appear in an intricate pattern as they do when Arceus summons them. We can see that they appear with architecture that is essentially identical to what we see at the Spear Pillar in Sinnoh, and the man we see in the picture, who appears to be talking to the Unknown or even commanding them, looks very much like the stereotypical depiction of God, complete with the big robes and long hair. Given the mention that also occurs earlier in the movie that this book is filled with artists' depictions of what these legendary Pokemon could look like, it is very possible that this page is actually meant to depict Arceus. Speaking of Arceus though, there's also something in the Gen 4 games that connects to Gen 5 as well. In Pokemon Platinum, at the villa in the resort area of the Battle Zone, the Sinnoh champion Cynthia will occasionally come to visit. During one of these visits, she says the following: "It's so relaxing here. Sigh, I don't want to go home. It's a complete mess with all my research papers strewn about. My house, even the region is a secret." Now, this could go a couple of different ways. This could be alluding to some future Pokemon region in a future generation that we have yet to see, since Cynthia's home region that she's referring to still hasn't been officially specified, or it could have been a tease to Pokemon Black and White. In those games, Cynthia does appear at Caitlin's villa in Undula Town, which is a similar sort of situation to the villa from Pokemon Platinum, and given that this dialogue was in Pokemon Platinum, which preceded Pokemon Black and White towards the back half of Gen 4, it's possible that this could have been what she was referring to, as an intentional tease towards the next generation, especially because she says, even the region is a secret. However, as mentioned, it is not her house that she's staying in Undula Town, so the ultimate meaning here is still a bit of mystery. Cynthia's house could have been changed by the developers after the fact into a villa that she was borrowing instead, or it could indeed be referring to some future Pokemon region that we still have not seen to this point. Yet another Gen 4 connection to Gen 5 also occurs in the anime, in the episode The Brockster is In. In the episode, Team Rocket are looking for treasure, and wonder if the treasure is gold, silver, rubies, sapphires, diamonds, pearls, or platinum, making a reference to many of the games. After this, James then says it's not quite that black and white, referencing the then upcoming 5th generation games. In Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, there is a picture that appears in various places that appears to depict a region of some kind, but not one that we knew of at the time. It does, however, look a bit like the UK, just rotated onto its side, and sure enough, shortly after the release of the Let's Go games, the UK-based Galar region was revealed for Pokemon Sword and Shield, making this a possible tease as well. This next one also connects to Galar, and is admittedly kinda weird, but definitely legit. On the Pokemon Kids TV Japan YouTube channel, a video was uploaded on January 31st, 2019, featuring the nursery rhyme, "London Bridge is Falling Down." Under any normal circumstance, this would mean absolutely nothing, but this video, which features iconic London landmarks in the background, was uploaded less than a month before Pokemon Sword and Shield were announced, so it was definitely released with that reveal in mind. Backtracking a bit, in Pokemon X and Y, there is an allusion to the then upcoming Hoenn remakes, which hadn't been revealed yet. There are a couple of NPCs in the game who, when talked to, say that their first date was in the Oceanic Museum, which is in Hoenn, and also remark that the 40th wedding anniversary is the Ruby anniversary and the 45th is Sapphire. This was obviously a deliberate attempt to shoehorn some Hoenn content into the Kalos games, and knowing what we know now, it was obviously done to tease Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire prior to their reveal. And just like with the last video, I now have a bonus entry for you that could potentially connect to Gen 10 someday, whenever Gen 10 gets announced. In the last video on this topic, I discussed a potential correlation to a possibly upcoming Netherlands region, and in this video, I want to propose another alternate idea concerning the possibility of a potential Australia region for Gen 10. So, in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, in the art room at the Academy, there is a painting hanging on the wall that resembles Uluru, a famous rock formation in Australia. This naturally can get a few eyebrow raises all on its own, but it goes way deeper than that. The art teacher at the Academy is Hassel, and he is mentioned to be from an unnamed region somewhere far away. So now we have this art with the art teacher also being from a mysterious region. It's starting to get interesting here, but it gets even more interesting with this last point, so strap yourselves in. During Hassel's class, he uses a Gible in one of his demonstrations, and Gible is a very interesting Pokemon because it too is from an unknown region. Its dex entries say that it once lived in the tropics, and that its original home is much hotter than Alola. With that said, it just so happens that Australia is known to be hot, and at least part of it does indeed fall within the area that is designated as the tropics. So could all three of these things, the picture, Hassel, and Gible, all be working together to create one big hint to an Australia region that is coming in Gen 10? Well, it seems rather compelling in my personal opinion, and it's also worth noting that for such a significant milestone like Generation 10, an Australia-based region is one that does seem like it would be worthy of an important occasion like this. So I feel like it works from that angle as well. So we're gonna have to keep a close eye on this one and see whether or not it ultimately ends up happening as time goes on. With that said though, that's all I got for you, so thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't yet for more. I will see you all soon with another new video as well, and until then, as always, thanks again so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.